Now entering the squared circle pit, we have one of the best guitarists in heavy metal right now. You may have seen her on stage with Alice Cooper. She's currently at the final stretch of crowdfunding her new solo album, and she just performed at the biggest wrestling event of the year, WrestleMania. Nita Strauss, thank you for entering the squared circle pit.
That is so awesome. The squared circle pit. That's genius. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. This podcast is all about the intersection of metal fandom and wrestling fandom. And I feel...
That's right up my alley.
Yeah, the Venn diagram for you would just be one circle.
Exactly. Well, I'm a mark. I'm a metalhead. So I'm all about it. I'm surprised I haven't already been a listener of your podcast from day one, but I'll definitely be subscribing after this.
Yeah. We talk to metalheads about wrestling and wrestlers about metal, so it works out.
That's awesome.
And I want to talk to you about a lot of stuff, but let's talk about your album really quick. You're working on this new solo album. You have a few days left on the crowdfunding. Tell us a little more about it.
Yeah, that's right. So as you mentioned in the intro, I'm somebody else's guitar player, and I've spent most of my career as somebody else's guitar player. So when I started, coming up with the concept of doing my solo record, we did talk to quite a few record labels about picking it up. But at the end of the day, I wanted to do something that was just on my own. I didn't want to have to depend on anybody. I didn't want to have to ask a label for approval or input or ask permission when I can go on tour or what I can put on the album art or anything. Like, I just wanted to do one thing that was uniquely and only, my own from myself. So that's why we ended up going the crowdfunding route, and it's been going so incredibly well. I'm so honored and thrilled by the response, and can't wait to get this album out.
That's awesome. So you have the album written? Are you still writing it, or what's the status of it?
It's about halfway done.
Mm-hmm. And do you have kind of like a schedule? Go ahead. Sorry, I was going to ask if you have like a timeline in your head of when you want it to be released or when you're looking to put it out.
It'll be out late September of this year.
Oh, okay. So you have a tight deadline for yourself, and you're going to.
I have a schedule. Yes. Well, the thing is, my touring schedule with Alice Cooper is so, it's really sort of set in stone, and there's only so many little breaks I get that I can do my own thing in. So this little break I have right now, Alice is working with his other band, the Hollywood Vampires. So that gives me a couple months to work on my signature guitar, do some guitar clinics on my own, and work on recording this album. And then we go on tour August through September, and then we have a 2-week break in September, and then we're out all of October. So then it would push my album release to November, and I don't really need to wait that long. So I think September will be perfect, that little break that I have in September.
Yeah, that sounds like it just makes the most sense. And you've been keeping very busy besides the album. I mentioned it at the top of the show. You performed at WrestleMania, which must have been the thrill of a lifetime. And
it was insane. Yeah.
I want to talk all about it. And you mentioned on some other podcasts about how you got into wrestling, but just in case people haven't heard, I was just curious if you could just tell the story of how you got into pro wrestling.
Sure. So I started dating my boyfriend Josh about 3.5 years ago, and he works really closely in the wrestling circle. He works with a lot of wrestlers in the indie scene and in WWE. So a few months after we started dating, I said, on a nice Sunday afternoon, I said, so what do you want to do today? He said, I want to watch WrestleMania. And I was like, WrestleMania? I didn't grow up with any TV. Like, I grew up in a house that didn't watch TV, so I didn't know anything about wrestling. I thought wrestling was like a kid's thing, and I was like, you want to watch wrestling? He goes, yeah. It's kind of a big deal, and I want to see what's going on. And so this was the WrestleMania where Sting came back. So this is like a huge deal, and we were watching it with people, and everyone was going, oh my gosh, Sting in WWE. This is so crazy. And me, as my first time watching wrestling, I was like, what is the big deal? This pro guy coming out in broad daylight, didn't get it at all. Like, I didn't get it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So we watched it, and we had gotten the network. We got the free trial of the network, the 30-day trial, so you can watch WrestleMania, you can watch pay-per-view. And I said, well, since we have this 30 days, why don't you show me some stuff? You like this, you date someone new, you want to find out about their interests, and I said, this is something you like? Show me why you like it. Like, what's cool about this? So he put on the special about the Monday Night Wars. And there's like this 14-part special. If any of you guys listening haven't watched this, there's this 14-part special on the network that basically just talks through everything from like ECW to WCW to NWO to like all the different feuds and everything going on. And by the time we got to the end of that, I was completely hooked. And I think I'm like, I must have a record for the most hours spent just like watching the network and catching up on stuff.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, the Monday Night Wars was an incredible documentary and a great way to really like kind of get a quick history lesson. I'm curious with so WrestleMania 32 is your first thing. How confused were you for the main event when it was Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, and then all of a sudden this other guy runs out with a briefcase? Like
I was beyond confused. I was like, who is this guy? Why does he have a briefcase? Why is everyone so excited? What's the big deal? And they're like, oh my gosh, it's Money in the Bank. And I was like, Money in the Bank? Like, it made none of it. But to be fair, none of it made any sense to me. I didn't, like,
right.
You don't understand the feuds, like, it's funny because now, Josh loves to tell the story that he'll come home and he'll find me watching, like, a random Raw from 2003. He's like, why are you watching this? And this is because I put on a pay-per-view and it made no sense. The storyline made no sense. So I had to go back and watch. Oh, that's the beauty of the network. You can go back and watch the build-up. And it's like, okay, now this is why they're feuding and this is what the deal is. So that's the beauty of having the WWE network.
Yeah, that's awesome. So who are some of your favorites, either past or present, just some characters that you find yourself drawn to?
I've always really liked high flyers, so I like RVD, Rey Mysterio, and I also like good performers, good characters like Flair and Ultimate Warrior. The showmen, the ones that like really make you care. Like Ultimate Warrior wasn't the best technician; he didn't have the best move set, but man, when he started running into the ring, you really care about the outcome of that match, and that's what I like about him.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so you've been watching now, I'm guessing, for like 3 years now. You have a busy schedule.
Yeah, I guess 3 years and change. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you keep up with it? How do you keep up? Like, do you try to keep up with it? Do you watch Raw every week? Do you kind of just check in for the pay-per-views?
I try to watch every week. I try to. I don't always make it. With my touring schedule. The guys always laugh at me because I always DVR Raw and SmackDown on the bus on USA. So, they try to watch something on the bus. It's like, you cannot watch, Monday Night Raw is in the process of recording. They're like, But, I try to keep up as much as I can. And I definitely do keep up with the pay-per-views. I got up at 8 o'clock in the morning to watch the Greatest Royal Rumble pre-show. So I guess you could say I'm pretty committed.
That is commitment. That's right. You are on the West Coast. It was during the afternoon for me, so I had an early work day to watch it. So let's talk a little bit about WrestleMania. That was such a cool moment, and it was so crazy. I remember you and Josh were shown in the crowd the night before at NXT, and just in my head, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of random. Like, did they just fly down just to watch the shows? Like are they like that big fans? And I thought it was cool that they acknowledged you. And then, of course, the next day, there you are shredding your head off as Nakamura comes out in like the most swag entrance he could ever have. And how did it all come about? Like, what was the impetus for this?
So it's, Josh, as well as being my boyfriend, is also my manager. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about having a manager like him is he's a visionary. Like, I'm a really good guitar player, but that's all I do. I don't see the bigger picture, really. I just go, man, I can play some good guitar, and that's my strength. And his strength is coming up with cool ideas and coming up with cool stuff. So in January, I remember he got this idea in his head. He's like, you're going to play Nakamura's song at WrestleMania. And I was like, okay. We don't know anyone at WWE, really, vaguely, through the, we know a few of the wrestlers and a few of, the people in the back. We don't know their music team or Triple H or Vince or anybody. But he's just had this idea in his head, and he started making phone calls and asking around, asking who the right person would be to talk to. And, he had me make a video in my dressing room on the Alice tour, playing Nakamura's song, just like literally playing along to it from YouTube in my dressing room. and sent that around. And I think it was maybe 10 days before WrestleMania that we first got in contact with the right people, with WWE's music supervisor. And I think it was about a week, I think, before the actual event that we got confirmed.
Wow, that's so cool. So it was really just Josh kind of advocating for you and campaigning and lobbying to get you on that stage. That's awesome.
Oh, totally, yeah. And the cool thing was when I talked to, when I finally did have the first conversation with WWE, they're like, oh, yeah, you've been on our radar. Like, we've been wanting to do something with you, and your name has come up a lot. So, we've had an idea like this already. So I think it was like really synchronicity. And we actually had already booked our plane tickets. We're like, you know what, we're just going to go. And if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. But, I really believe that you speak what you want into existence. And we definitely spoke that into happening.
Right. You visualized it and it happened. I love it.
Exactly. We went to SmackDown a few months before and, they had the WrestleMania sign up, of course. And I told Josh, here, take a picture of me pointing at the sign. You visualize it, and it happened. I pointed at that damn WrestleMania sign, and there I was a few months later playing at WrestleMania. So point at the sign when you go to the live events.
And then you'll end up at WrestleMania. That's the rule.
You know what? If history is any indication, then yes.
I thought it was so cool that, Alice Cooper had that big moment at WrestleMania 3, walking out Jake the Snake Roberts, and 31 years later, you're there shredding, having your own moment. I thought that was like a cool little synchronicity that worked out with the WWE and Alice Cooper.
Yeah, and how cool that they mentioned that. That's a lot of the newer fans might not know that. That I knew it, but a lot of the newer people watching, maybe they had no idea that Alice was once a part of, a huge storyline of WrestleMania. So
yeah, and they go back and watch.
They mentioned it.
Now, was it hard to learn Nakamura's theme? Is it a difficult song? Because also part of it was mostly written on violin, or was it pretty straightforward?
No, it wasn't hard. To be honest with you, I don't mean to sound egotistical, but it wasn't.
No.
It's not a hard song,
Right.
It's not like going in there and playing Dream Theater or Cannibal Corpse or something that's really fast tempo or anything. It's a really straightforward melodic song. So I was just able to have fun with it.
That's funny that you mentioned Cannibal Corpse. Earlier when you were talking about DVRing Raw, it reminded me I had Corpse Grinder on the show, and he says that he DVRs it at home, and basically when he gets home from tour, he goes through 6 months of Raw and SmackDown chronologically to get all caught up on the story. So that is
my Lord, they don't have a DVR on their bus?
I don't know.
That's commitment.
Maybe the rest of the band doesn't want to play it, but
they put him up on the network 2 weeks later.
You got to talk to him. You got to give him a better strategy here.
I'll let him know. We'll trade touring wrestling fan secrets.
I like it. So how long before WrestleMania did you get down? What was there, a rehearsal? What was that like?
So we were out in New Orleans, and they basically just said, can you just be around if we want to do a rehearsal? And I said, yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. I'll definitely be there. And we were planning on being there anyway. We went to the Hall of Fame. We went to NXT, which was amazing. And, and a few days before they said, we're just gonna run it on Sunday. And I was like, Sunday?
Wow.
WrestleMania Sunday. Yeah, we'll just run it when you get in. I was like, okay. That sounds, what am I going to say? No, I need more practice time. I said, okay, there's only one thing that you can say, and that sounds great.
Right.
Let me know what time you'd like me there. So I said, that sounds wonderful, sir. Thank you very much. Let me know what time you'd like me at the arena. And they said, sound check will be at 1. So we got there at noon and got all set up, and we ran it 3 times. So I met Shinsuke on stage actually right at that moment, and I thanked him. I said, thank you very much for this opportunity to play your music. And he said, well, you're welcome, but actually I didn't know this was happening, so you don't really need to thank me. So that kind of goes to show you, they have everything very organized, but it's very on a need-to-know basis, it seems like.
Yeah.
And we ran it once, and then Shinsuke wanted to watch it back to see what it looked like and what I was doing. And then we ran it back twice more. And then literally, like, there was a clock going, so you could see doors are in 1 hour and 15 minutes, and then WrestleMania starts,
Right.
So we're like, okay, we better get off the stage. Vince actually came out and gave me some notes, which was really cool. And then we were done. Then we were off to the races, and the doors opened and WrestleMania started.
So if I could just zero in on that. So, like, was Vince producing? Like, who was kind of giving you the cues?
It was Vince and WWE's music supervisor, Neil, and also Michael Hayes.
Oh, cool. And so, like, were there any fun insights from Michael Hayes or Vince McMahon that you would share, other than the basic, like, stand here or whatever?
It was mostly stand here, this, that. Vince is a funny story I've told a few times, but it's such a great story. Vince came out after the first time, and he said, beautiful, beautiful, well, great job. I have one suggestion for you. And I said, yes, sir. Anything, any suggestions, please, would be very welcome. I don't know what I said, but it probably sounded exactly like that. Yes, absolutely, anything you say, like. And he said, so when the camera cuts from you to the violins, because there was a lot of violin players on the stage. He said, when the camera cuts from you to the violin players, I want you to jump. And I said, that sounds great. When does that happen? And he said, well, when the camera cuts from you to the violin players. And I said, oh, no, I understand that, but I can't see. I'm out here on stage. I don't know what the camera's doing. So there was this moment of like, oh my God, I want so much to do what he's saying, but I have no idea what that means. He's giving me a camera note when I don't see the cameras.
Right.
So after a few times, I just sort of went, yeah, okay, you know what? I got it. That sounds great. Thank you. Let me run it again and let me see if this is what you want. And he said, okay, cool. And then I turned to Michael Hayes and a couple people around. I said, please tell me that one of you guys knows when that is, what part of the song this happens in, because I don't know. I can't see the cameras.
Right.
So one of them actually went back and watched on the cameras and said, okay, it's going to be right before the song hits. And that's when the jump's going to be. And it was a true Vince McMahon genius moment, because that jump looked really sick on the cameras.
Yeah, it looked awesome. And so, like, it's 10 seconds before your cue to begin playing. What is going through your head looking at, like, 70,000 people, 70,000 wrestling fans?
Oh my God, I was so excited. Like, I didn't get any sleep. I wasn't nervous, because the song's not hard. Just playing guitar is all I do. But I was so excited. And the tension in that room was so intense. Like the Nakamura Styles match was the one everybody wanted to see, myself included. So it was just like you could cut the tension and the excitement in the room with a knife. And it was just like, I was just excited.
And then, I thought the whole thing went down. So it was essentially the best entrance, I feel, of WrestleMania this year. It was so cool. I'm sure you must have felt like really excited after. What was the vibe like when you were done and you go backstage to watch the match?
Oh, it was so awesome. It was so amazing. Vince gave me a big hug and complimented me. He said, such charisma, which I thought was so cool. It was amazing being back there, just being in gorilla position and getting to be there. As we were there getting ready for the match, Shinsuke and AJ were back there kind of like warming up and stretching. I went and did some interviews and came back, and Brock and Roman were in there getting ready for their match. So it was really surreal, but there was just, everyone seemed really happy with it. The vibe overall was just really, really great.
Was it kind of crazy to see all of that, like, behind the curtain stuff? Like, as a fan, you just assume it's all, I don't want to say like all improv in the ring, but you kind of don't think about all that stuff. And here you are seeing them like working out their moves and all that stuff.
They didn't, I will, to be honest, I didn't see them do any of that. It was more just them. I'm sure they do. But it was more just them, like, kind of like getting in the zone, warming up. Brock was jumping around. It was cool.
I see. They're more like hyping themselves up to go out.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And were you able to watch any of, I'm guessing you probably didn't watch much of what happened before your performance, but did you watch the stuff after?
Oh, we watched almost all of it. Like,
oh, really?
We're such big fans, so when my dressing room had like pretty easy access to actually like sort of the back of the crowd. Mm-hmm. So we just stood at the back of the crowd, by one of the aisles and watched almost all the matches.
Oh, that's awesome.
when Ronda came out, we actually snuck up. I had my makeup like half on, you know, it was a total mess. And I just put a hood over my head and we ran up and kind of like snuck up near the front and watched the whole match. It was awesome.
That match was so much better than I thought. Like that was the match of the night, I would argue. I was
really
questionable
was.
about that.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And you guys went, did you guys go to Raw and SmackDown as well?
We did.
By the time you're at SmackDown, are you a little wrestling fatigued, or were you still just as excited as the first day?
We were a little burned out. I would be lying if I said we weren't a little burned out, but it was still so much fun, you know, like, and WWE, they treated us like rock stars, you know, they treated us like so incredibly well. And when they said, you know, on Monday, they said, so you're coming back tomorrow, right? We're like, I don't know. We were kind of just thinking we were just going to chill on our last day in New Orleans. They're like, no, you have to come. Like, you're our guests. Come on out. And we're, you know, how do you, again, you know, I keep saying,
you can't turn that down.
Yeah. Oh no, we got some other stuff to do.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And then, so, I want to talk a little bit more about the wrestling stuff. So do you just watch WWE, like just watch the network, or do you check out any of the indies, any New Japan?
Yeah, we do a lot. I've played at an indie promotion in LA where we live called PCW Ultra.
Awesome.
I played, before even WWE, I played RVD's music. I played The Great Muda. I played Pentagon. You know, I'll be back there this coming Friday, May 4th. I'm not playing, just going to be there as a fan. So it's really fun to go to the indies. And of course, I'll be playing Mick Foley's music on Thursday for one of his the 20 Years of Hell tour in LA as well.
That's awesome. Now, like, you and Mick have kind of formed a bit of a friendship, because I know he's a Alice Cooper fan and you're a wrestling fan, and it worked out. So how did that come about? We
met Mick at a Comic-Con. Actually, we were signing down the hall from each other, and we had like a little lull, and Josh said, I'm going to go over and say hi to Mick Foley. And next thing I know, Mick Foley's just like walking up to my table like, hey, I heard you were over here. I just want to introduce myself. I was like, what? So, we ended up talking, getting to know each other. The three of us went out to dinner that night, and we just have stayed in contact. And Mick has come to a couple Alice Cooper shows, and I'm really excited to go to a couple of his shows coming up. And it's just really, really been a cool friendship. And Mick is such a great person and such a great supporter. It's been really amazing.
That's so awesome. Yeah, he's one of my all-time favorites. Absolutely. Like, his body of work is just like, he did some crazy things. But also it was a great promo. So, like, when you go back to the network, is there a particular era that you find yourself drawn to, or particular wrestlers, or do you kind of randomize it?
I love watching Attitude Era.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm always drawn to. Like, you know, the last little while I've been watching some of the later stuff, like, you know, when they did ECW One Night Stand, kind of like 2005, 2006-ish. But so I thought there were some really cool angles. You know, there was a great storyline going on with Mick Foley and Terry Funk and Tom Mooney. It's weird to see Dreamer and everybody all in WWE, but I think it's kind of cool. So I like watching that stuff. But it's usually the Attitude Era. You can't go wrong with the classics.
Yeah, I mean, Attitude Era for me also is just such a fun time, just growing up during it. You know, that I'm always drawn to it. I always find myself going back to old WCW stuff as well, just because it's so completely different, like the presentation of it. And like one of my all-time favorite.
Completely different.
Yeah, especially like the early 90s, late 80s, when it's like much more Southern. And I really enjoy that kind of like cheesiness of it.
Yeah.
And also one of my all-time favorites, I always end up going back to Halloween Havoc and watching Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio, which is like maybe the best cruiserweight match of all time. I don't know if
we literally just watched that yesterday or day before yesterday.
That's awesome.
Literally,
yeah.
I watched that for the first time. I haven't watched much WCW. You know, my resident wrestling fan, Josh, every time I put WCW on, he goes, oh, production value. And Yeah, we just watched when Sting came out with RoboCop and.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's just like
it's a little much.
yeah, it's unreal. But the
it's
cruiserweight
fun.
stuff, especially if you mentioned you like the high flying, like I would recommend go through 97, 98, just watch the cruiserweight matches because that was the best wrestling on the show. At that time,
Yeah.
like all the good WWE stuff was in the main event, and all the good WCW stuff was in like the opening 3 matches, kind of thing.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm still learning. There's 3 years is a long time, but it's really not all that long in the grand scheme of things. So I've still got a lot to learn.
I have a friend that I got into professional wrestling kind of right around that time, like the SummerSlam right before that, WrestleMania, and it's kind of the same thing where she got into jiu-jitsu, so that was kind of her way of getting into wrestling, and like we just get together and we're like, let's watch this, and it's fun. But I have to say, for someone who's only been watching for 3 years, you got the terminology down pat.
Thank you.
Well, Nita, thank you so much for taking some time. I know you're super busy to talk to me about pro wrestling. Hopefully one of these days, either in New York or LA, we could catch an indie show or a WWE show together and talk and nerd out even more with Josh as well, obviously.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And anytime you're in LA, let us know if you want to come to a PCW show because they're a ton of fun.
I would love to go to a PCW show. I would love to check any and all indie pro wrestling out. I went out to LA last Labor Day and I caught PWG, their Battle of Los Angeles.
I've been wanting to see them.
Yeah, highly recommended. It's a crazy. I'm sure it's similar to the vibe of PCW and like bar wrestling, but it's its own little animal that they've created. So it's fun stuff.
Yeah, the thing that I like about PCW, and this just might be me being like a little bit elitist because I've been touring for a long time, and I just, from what I understand, I've never been to PWG. I've heard nothing but amazing things. Mm-hmm. But I've also heard that there's like no air conditioning.
Yes,
it's like really
it's
small.
brutal.
It's really crowded. It's really hot. Like, which is cool. But if I can get that same rad high level of wrestling, those guys in PCW Ultra, they knock over every single chair in the entire building. they're everybody's covered with blood and sweat and tacks and everything by the end of it. But you can do it for the most part until they take your chair from you. You can do it in an air conditioned room, with a seat and a taco truck and
right, yeah.
a lot of all that good stuff.
Seems much more comfortable as a venue. Well, cool. Let's once again, I want to mention your solo album. If you'd like to, I guess it's essentially like a pre-order of the album. If you'd like to pre-order Nita Strauss's album, you can check it out on Kickstarter. We'll have a link on the podcast page. Nita, anything else you'd like to plug?
No, just we're just finishing up the Kickstarter. There are some super cool things that aren't going to be available after this Friday. There's everything from me wearing your band T-shirt on stage with Alice to coming having pizza with me at my favorite pizza place with me and Josh. You can talk wrestling or pizza or metal or whatever you want. Skype guitar lessons and signed guitars of mine, anything. There's a lot of cool stuff on there. So I definitely encourage everybody to just check it out and see if there's something on there for you.
Right. And just to clarify, at the minimum, you could pre-order the album, but there's also some other great packages like you just mentioned beyond
Yeah,
that.
Definitely.
Nita, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Everyone, check out Alice Cooper this summer. Nita, you're going to be doing your solo stuff. We'll be covering it plenty here on Metal Injection. Have a great one.
Thank you so much.
What a cool